I'm Milica Andric. I was born in Prishtina, but raised in Zubin Potok, so I basically lived my whole life there until I started my undergraduate studies of English language and literature here in North Mitrovica. And after graduation, I found a job in an NGO, and basically since that time I live in North Mitrovica.
And where were you living in 2007? Like leading up to, like in the summer of 2007, were you in Mitrovica then?
No, I was in Zubin Potok. That was my second year of high school. So basically at that point I didn't really travel much except for around Serbia with my folklore dancing group. So basically all that I knew was Zubin Potok, especially from Kosovo. Like the farthest that I've gone to Kosovo, except for the part where I was born in Prishtina, but I don't really remember it, was North Mitrovica. So I didn't know much of Kosovo at that point, except for our four northern municipalities.
Mm-hmm. And do you remember like anything leading up to independence? Do you remember whether it was reported in the media or whether anyone in your circle talked about the fact that Kosovo would declare independence soon?
So again, given that I was in second year of high school, I really wasn't that much interested in politics. And we in Zubin Potok were especially isolated. I kind of knew that Albanians as a community existed, but I never knew one. So to me, it was like it was happening elsewhere. So I didn't really know what the independence or declaration, the act itself of the Declaration of Independence meant at the time that it happened. And I actually don't remember absolutely anything about the day when the declaration happened, because it wasn't simply something that interested me. However, a day after the declaration, I do remember this part where one of the teachers in school told us this was not the first time that Kosovo declared independence. So that was like the only, the first contact that I had with, of getting a piece of information of what this act might mean. After that, I did ask my mother, like, what does this entail? What is this? And she also kind of dismissed it. She said, oh, okay, it's nothing to be concerned about. And actually, at that time, she was right, because it didn't really affect our lives. Because after the declaration, we've seen UNIC institutions like lose their competencies, and in their stead, it was Serbian institution that grew stronger. So it really, in the northern part of Kosovo, it didn't have much of legal consequences, I would say, at the moment when the declaration was of independence was, or actually when independence was declared. The first, let's say, consequence, legal, true consequences of this act we felt in April 2013 and then November 2013 when we had the first local elections. And since then, I would kind of say that we had this very postponed reaction to what the Declaration of Independence was back in 2007.
You said something very interesting. You said that you didn't, like, there was no legal consequence until you voted. Was that the first time you also voted? Were you here in Mitrovica, or like, what do you remember?
Actually, I haven't voted in Kosovo elections yet, because I never felt that I have a good choice in the elections, so I still haven't used that right in Kosovo system. I did vote for Serbian presidential elections, I think twice, yes, and maybe one parliamentary elections in Serbia, but not Kosovo elections yet.
And do you remember anything specific, like why you think it was so monumental? Like stories that other people might have said? Like, was it then when it kind of hit home that this part of the country had declared independence? No,
actually, it was not in 2013. It was way before, of course, when I started getting interested in politics in general, or starting to get to volunteer in civil society. So it was maybe 2010, 11 that I finally understood that there is this status dispute, that I actually started concerning myself with it, because in 2011 actually we had the first opposed declaration of independence talks between Belgrade and Prishtina, and this is when it started getting serious. So we had the agreement on IBM, which given that it was not implemented immediately, we had the issue with the ROSU special forces in Zubin Potok, actually, the consequent death of Enver Zumberi, the 2.5 years of barricades that followed this incident. So that is when it really started becoming a reality in our municipalities here.
And do you think also for you personally, was it just part of like a political awareness that you kind of came to deal with it? And can you explain a bit more, like maybe through a personal story?
Yeah, I would say on a personal level, because the things that happened in 2011, it was kind of collective. But on the personal level, the first time that I met Albanian was in 2014, summer of 2014. And they were my colleagues. I worked very shortly for a USAID program at that point as an interpreter. And they helped me get my documents. I had to go to Prishtina to get my birth certificate, Tulpiana, I think. So that was the first time that I met an Albanian. That was the first time that I actually went to Prishtina. So it was, on a personal level, 2014 was a year of understanding Kosovo reality for me.
And how did it feel?
It was very weird.
When you went to Prishtina?
It was very weird, and I was so focused on not having administrative problems that I didn't really concentrate on where I was. And also I felt extremely comfortable with my colleagues. So it wasn't, I didn't feel apprehension or fear. But it was very weird. I do remember him saying, because I was speaking to him in English, and he said, "Priči srpski da te ceo svet razume." And I was like, okay, no problem. But it was weird.
And so we're nearing towards the 10th anniversary, and do you have any, I'm not really sure what to call them, but are you worried, or what do you think it's going to, like, what do you think is going to mark this anniversary, especially after the events in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very troublesome anniversary, especially if the special court starts coming up with indictments. The assassination of Oliver Ivanovic that we had not 2 weeks ago, it was a shocking thing, it was a huge thing, but it really honestly did not, in spite of what politicians are saying, it did not really affect interethnic relations, especially not in Mitrovica, not on the community level. In that term, even though this was a huge event, I don't think that it would make any significant change to how communities interact. However, the special court might bring resentment. I mean, it really depends on how both communities react to the results of this court and how the court itself handles these cases. So I think that it's going to be very troublesome anniversary, but I'm guessing we'll find a way through it. I don't expect anything too traumatic to happen. I hope, actually. So I'm not afraid, but I am on guard.
I mean, I don't know, I really wanted to talk a bit more about, because this is very interesting to me, the fact that there's no actual recollection of the event. How about the people around you? Like, do they, have you asked them, like, since, especially if you've, like, kind of, you had to encounter it as an event later on, like, how how does that conversation go?
Yeah, when you contacted me about this interview, because then I realized that I don't have absolutely any memory of the day itself. So I did ask people around me. They were a bit older, but they all have recollection of the day and vivid recollection of the day. So they kind of knew, but also majority of my friends were students of political sciences at that point, so for them it was like a major thing that happened, and two of them were in Belgrade, one of them was here in Kosovo. So the first thing that they do remember is the massive protest in Belgrade, which is to this day called Kosovo for Sneakers, because some of the protesters were destroying the sports equipment stores and stealing sneakers. I think that there was even burning of some embassies, if I remember correctly. So basically everybody remembers at least something of that day, and they do remember the protests that came afterwards. I also do remember protests here in Mitrovica. We organized them at 12:44. And I did go to one or two of them, because there was this option. If you were in these older years of high school, they would like inform you a day in advance. So you ask your parents, get permission, so you can go to a protest or you can go back home, and then you would have to go to classes on weekends to make up for the lost classes. So yeah, I went to, I think, maybe 2 protests, and that's basically all that I remember from that time.
Mm-hmm. What did you do at the protest? Like, do you guys have uniforms in your school?
No.
No, I mean the school uniforms.
No, we don't use them. We don't have them. No, I mean, politicians said things. We were in the audience. That was basically it. Maybe I think that it happened once or twice that we would go have coffee, but then they started closing down the coffee shops so people wouldn't really disperse, especially students. So even that was not an option. So if you went to the protest, you had to be in the crowd and listen to politicians say things.
Yeah, you couldn't skip school and not go to the protest.
Yeah, but you have to go then on the weekends, so it was not really a bargain. So that's why I didn't really go to many of those.
And how about your family? Do they remember it, like your parents?
I haven't asked them, unfortunately, but I'm guessing that they do. I'm actually sure that they do. I think that my mother told me it's nothing to worry about, because she didn't really feel that this was something great that was happening, but she wanted me to make sure that at least I don't worry about it. So I do think that they remember, but I really didn't ask them.
Do you think it's a difficult topic to talk about?
No, it's just I didn't think to ask them. It's that it wasn't, especially for me, that it wasn't represented as something huge, especially not at that time. So we really kind of like dismissed it, like it was not something that you would make fuss about at that point. 2013 was way different. The Brussels Agreement was like everywhere. Everybody spoke about it. Everybody had a copy of it, reading it. Like it was. I think that was something that Kosovo Serbs south of Iber experienced on the day of the Declaration of Independence. What we experienced when the Brussels Agreement was signed. So for us, that was kind of the true Declaration of Independence.
Was that because the media kind of reported it as like an agreement, like a very important agreement, or? No,
because it was clear from reading it. It was very clear what it actually meant. So even though the media represented it as something completely different, and it was very short, like 14 points. Anybody can focus on reading 14 points. It was basically 1 page and like 2 rows on the other side. So I think that everybody realized, majority of people realized at that point what it meant. So that's why it was a huge deal, because it really did mean a substantial life change for everybody living in 4 northern municipalities.
I don't have any questions, but if you have anything else to share, like that you're thinking that would be interesting.
I really did think a lot trying to remember, but also, and I had a diary, but I didn't want to go through it in order not to put some false memories, but it was also a diary that was, I took it with my friend from school desk. So she and I wrote only about things that happened in school. So I do remember there was a faint reference, like Kosovo declared independence yesterday, but Stefana did this today. Like, it was not really about that. It was really something that, like, again, we really dismissed it. It was like, ah, like, it happened somewhere else, because we were very, very detached from the rest of the reality in Kosovo.